Has the bid said when they were going to put the Christmas display up?
Yeah, I think it's this weekend.
Okay. Benedict, I can see you. You were asking in the chat. I can see you. I have to say, Ted, that on days like today, even though it was sunny outside, I don't know if I would be wanted to dining outside.
Yeah. Although, you know, with the space heaters, it can be okay, but it's still,
Yeah.
it's going to be tough. Well, it's supposed to warm up soon, though.
Hey, Benedict, did you have a question?
No, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Oh, okay. Why?
Yeah, when
So
it's. Go
How
ahead.
does it work? Because I'm getting confused each time. Sometimes with Zoom I can talk, sometimes I cannot. So
Yeah.
with your system, I have to click on the little raise hand, correct?
That's correct. Yes, and then as part of the discussion, we'll unmute your microphone.
Oh, okay, great. I just wanted to make sure because I haven't been on the Zoom call with ANC for a long time.
Okay. Well, welcome.
Okay, thanks. Hey, Teddy.
Hey, Benedict.
Nice to see you and hear you.
There he is. Mir. Joan, was that?
Yes.
Did you have a question?
I can't find the gallery button to make everybody show up. I'm like looking for it.
On the top, it should have a box that allows you to either go full screen or press gallery view.
That upper right corner,
Yeah.
it says
Where
view.
did Mir go?
He's there somewhere. I see his name.
I don't have
Can you guys hear me?
I don't have this little
Exactly. It's not there. And I've been using Zoom for like a year and a half.
Okay.
I don't have that either.
It might be that just I control that here in this setting. Sorry about that, guys.
It's up on mine. Maybe that's because I'm a panelist.
Yeah.
Might be.
Okay.
Let me see this. No.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can, Amir.
Yes, okay. Why don't we get started? It's just the two of us today, Ted and I, on as commissioners for the PZT meeting for November. So thank you all for joining the Planning, Zoning, and Transportation Committee meeting for ANC 1C. My name is Amir Irani. I'm chair of the committee. My fellow commissioner, would you like to introduce yourself?
Ted Guthrie, ANC 1C03.
So why don't we just hop right in? The first item on the agenda is we have a resolution about the decriminalization of street vending. people can find the resolution by visiting our website, anc1c.org, and navigating to the committees at the top from the top navigation bar. And you'll see on the PZT
Whoops.
where you'll find that there's a link to this specific street vending resolution. Now, there is a DC Council bill that's sponsored by our councilwoman, Brianna Doe, and we do have, my understanding is, I think we have somebody from Nadeau's office here with us, Miss Ali Bobak.
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect. Ali, would you like to kick this off?
Sure. Thank you so much, Commissioner Arani and Guthrie, for having me. I know I've spoken about vending on various ANC 1C meetings, so I'll keep it short and then open for further questions. But basically, the street vending decriminalization. So we've introduced two street vending bills, and this was the first one. It was introduced in the summer because we had just noticed that because vending was criminalized, it was causing specifically sidewalk vendors in Ward 1 to have difficult interactions with the police, given that if somebody called 311 because of illegal sidewalk vending, so that could be a sidewalk vendor without a license, a sidewalk vendor not in their specific public space, maybe somebody with health code violations, 311 would send that to MPD. MPD would come and the interactions were just quite difficult. And we have the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs, DCRA, which does have the ability to enforce vending. And so what this decriminalization bill does is it just takes the criminalization piece away from the regulation of street vending, so that it just falls into the hands of DCRA. It is a civil infraction, so that means it's a ticket and it's not a criminal infraction. And it just, keeps the enforcement, but takes the police and the criminalization out of it, so that one, so that our vendors don't have that bad interaction, but two, because MPD is just extremely busy with a large number of, difficult things that they have to solve in our community. And we just thought that this doesn't specifically need to be one of them. So that is what it is. And we appreciate the resolution and of course here for any questions.
Great, thank you for that summary. And I hope I can already see a question. So Kristen, would you like to go ahead?
Hi, everyone. Ali, can you tell us a little bit more about the managed street vending part of this? Because I think the commission would be interested in hearing about that.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Kristen. Nice to hear you. Yeah, so this is the Street Vending Decriminalization Amendment Act, but we also did a Sidewalk Vending Zone Amendment Act. That's a much more complex bill, but it relates to this bill because it's kind of the next step to get our sidewalk vendors who might not be licensed to provide them with a clear and accessible path to sidewalk vending. So one of the reasons that the police get called on sidewalk vendors currently in the ward is because they do not have a license. And one of the reasons they do not have a license is because currently to get an individual sidewalk vending license, which is a Class A license under DCRA, it's quite difficult. You have to go to DDOT and get public space. Then you have to go to Department of Health if you're selling food and get quite a few approvals. Then you have to go to DCRA, and it's expensive and it's difficult, and so it's just hasn't been very accessible for our vendors. So what we did is we created the Sidewalk Vending Zones Amendment Act. It creates a licensing scheme specifically for sidewalk vendors. It creates what's called a sidewalk vending zone, which would be a 10-block radius that has designated spaces within the zones where vendors with a license and I can, I'll say how the license works in a minute, could legally vend. So this, I like to describe it as mini markets within kind of a larger zone. You can vend in that zone by either getting an individual vendor license, or a local nonprofit could get a manager license, and under that manager license, register vendors to be able to vend in that sidewalk vending zone. So that kind of facilitates the process for sidewalk vendors to register with a local nonprofit that can kind of oversee their work, and not have to deal with the multi-agency approach, but still be in compliance. And finally, it creates a pilot sidewalk vending zone in Columbia Heights, so your neighbors, in which you see designated spaces throughout Columbia Heights and a little bit into Mount Pleasant. So that is, a complementary, I would say, introduction to this Decriminalization Amendment Act, because this is kind of an attempt to just provide more immediate relief to our sidewalk vendors. And then we said, but there's a larger issue. And so that's what the other bill addressed.
Again, people, I understand, miss their relatives. This has been a stressful time. We support
Kristen?
Yeah, sure. Ellie and I have talked about this before, but we're interested in this managed sidewalk vending bill, because I think it might provide an opportunity to do some interesting markets in Adams Morgan in some of our small public spaces. However, those are going to need to be managed between, setting up the vendors and making sure they have all their health certificates and are paying sales taxes, and also, cleaning up each day and marketing it. So, Allie and I have talked about this, there's going to have to be some funding for that, because, to do that is going to be, one person's full-time job. So, we're hopeful that the council will find some funding to attach to that. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult to implement. But we think that some of our brick and mortar retailers would be interested. And it might also be an opportunity to get the couple of street vendors. We don't have very many because our sidewalks are kind of narrow. But we have a couple on Columbia Road in the 1700 block. A couple of them might be interested in moving in there also. So, yeah, but our concern is that, these need to be managed and managed well, and that's going to require some funding.
Good points. Thank you, Kristen. Other questions from members of the community? Commissioner Guthrie, do you have questions?
I got muted. Sorry. No, no questions. But I would like to move this proposed motion, and that we recommend that the full ANC pass this full motion at the December meeting.
Well, great. I second and call to a vote. All those in favor of the motion as indicated, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? Obviously no abstention. So 2-0. Okay. Moving to the next item is the Festival Center renovation. Do we have anyone from the Festival Center or their team that will be conducting the renovations? Okay. Graham, Emily, and Kyle. You guys are all live here, so please do. And for some background, the Festival Center is a nonprofit and multi-purpose community facility on Columbia Road, and the zoning relief that they're asking for is to exceed FAR limits for basically they're expanding the festival center and they're expanding it beyond what is generally allowed, and what they're seeking is a special exception in order to exceed the maximum allowable FAR. So I'd like to hand it over to the folks at the festival center so that they can elaborate on the renovation.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, my name is Emily Vaias. I don't know if others on the team have made it. Is Shirley on? She and Bill Mefford are also with. We were having a little trouble getting on. Do you see them? I can't see who else is.
So I see there's Graham who's on, and Kyle. I don't see. Oh, there's Bill. But oh, there's Shirley too. All right.
Okay. Can you let
Yes, share my screen.
Can you hear
Okay,
me?
yes. And then if
Okay.
Graham
Great.
can share his screen, he
I'm
will.
just seeing a black screen. Is that at the right?
Yep.
Okay.
And if you let Graham share, then he can put the plans up, if that's something we can do and we can go
Sure.
through. And in the meantime, sorry, Graham McSweeney, you're right.
Oh boy.
So we'll just, I'm Emily Vaias, I'm with Ballard's Bar representing the Festival Center. And Shirley, I'll let you do the rest of the intro while we get the screen up.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Shirley Goubert-Rumble. I am the CEO of USource. We are providing project management and construction services, support services to the Festival Center for this project located at 1640 Columbia Road, which is on your screen there. I'm assuming most of you may be familiar with this building. I call it the Gateway Building. As you enter Columbia Road, it's really the first thing you see, and it is a community building here, as you can see the location right there on Columbia Road in Mozart. Before I go a little further as far as what we're proposing to do, I just want to take the time to again introduce Bill Mefford, who's also on this call. Bill is the executive director of the Festival Center. If those of you are familiar with this building, in addition to Bill, there's a board of directors who has been very involved in really, coming up with the vision for this building and really working with the nonprofit community here, in addition to the local residents, to ultimately what's been envisioned here is to really expand. As you all know, this is a nonprofit building where a lot of nonprofits occupy the space, and a place where people and place comes together. And in keeping with that, Bill and the board has looked at ways to really repurpose this building and really expand it and open up to the community even more so than, so how it's been so far. And with that being said, they came to us to provide some assistance in helping them pull a team together, which includes engineers, architects, and the legal team that's also here on the call with this. The lead counsel is Emily Vaias, who's with Ballard and Spar. And what we are going to do is I'll let Emily go into the details and technicalities of what's being proposed from a zoning standpoint. But as far as the building itself, now, as you can see here, this is the front view of the building facing Columbia Road. The building is, was built in 1987, I believe. And so it's been a while since there's been substantial upgrades to mechanical building systems. I would say they all are in really deteriorated condition now. The interior space is obsolete. The building really is at the point of all of its life cycles have actually come to an end or nearing the end. And so perfect timing to say, okay, well, let's look at how we can really bring this building into all of what we believe it has the potential to be. And so what was proposed here is to renovate the building. The first thing is to really look at energy efficient upgrades to the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems to achieve what we're proposing is about 50% energy savings. And that's with a new VRF mechanical system with heat recovery. That's with solar panels that would occupy the roof area, including a new installation, LED upgrade, lighting upgrades, in addition to a very extensive security enhancements in access control. What we're envisioning here is really creating a space that is more open to the community. There's a commercial kitchen that's going to be completely renovated. It'll have a teaching component that will be open to the community. There's already a meeting room there that will be completely renovated with state-of-the-art audio visuals. And then what we're proposing is to build out a mezzanine level. And this is where Emily will provide a little more information. So the mezzanine level will include an additional 1,000 square feet of office space. And on the third floor that already has an existing office area, which is probably about 1,500 square feet. As you can see here from the rear, a portion of the third floor is already being utilized. But what we're proposing to do is build out the remaining portion of that third floor to create obviously more space. Again, 100% of the space will be allocated to nonprofit organizations. And going back to my initial introduction, and that it's in keeping with really creating a network for the nonprofit community, creating space that's affordable, and that will offer them the opportunity to continue to build off of what they've established. And so, and all that, will obviously benefit the immediate residents of this community and the District of Columbia as a whole. With that said, I'll stop there, and we'll go into the details of what's proposed and what is being requested.
Okay, thanks, Shirley. So, so again, my name is Emily Vaias. I'm with Ballard Spahr and have with me Kyle DeThomas, my associate, and Graham McSweeney, our paralegal. And so between us, we are working to get this application together. I will just clarify that we originally thought we needed a special exception. We have since had some subsequent meetings with Matt LeGrant and Joel Lawson, and they have determined that we need a variance instead of a special exception. So that is what we will be applying for. But it doesn't change, of course, practically speaking, what it is we are doing to the building. So this chart just sort of quickly will show you that the zone that we are in, the MU5A, actually allows a total density of 3.5, but it does limit the non-residential use to a 2.0. But there is also a specific carve out for small lots, which are lots that are under 10,000 square feet, which is what we are, which allows you to have a non-residential density of a 2.0 FAR. And so we are asking that we be allowed to go to a 2.3, as you'll see in the third column, as opposed to just the 2.0, which would allow us to have a building of about 18,000 square feet versus the 15,000 that would otherwise be permitted. And in addition, there is also a provision that says that when you do have non-residential space in this zone, they want it to be on the ground floor and the story directly above that floor. But we are, and the total building is all non-residential space, as Shirley described. It is nonprofit office space, and will continue to be that type of space. But it will be on the 3rd floor, which is the second variance that we'll be asking, is to allow that space to remain commercial space. So what we are proposing physically, and we'll quickly go through the plans, but as you can see from the numbers, the 1st floor is staying the same, about 5,900 square feet. We are adding a mezzanine between the 1st and 2nd floors because the ceilings are tall. And so if we add a mezzanine, that will allow for some additional community meeting space. And then the 2nd floor remains the same, and the 3rd floor, which is currently about 2,300 square feet, we will just be filling in essentially the 2 parts of the building that are on the 3rd floor already. So that floor also becomes about 5,000 square feet. So in the end, we are, as I said, about 18,000 square feet of non-residential development. Next slide. So this just shows you the property. Said it's about a 7,900 square foot lot at the corner of Columbia and Mozart. Next slide. This is a little tough to see, but it is showing the existing building essentially, with the parking on the back side, and there is also an underground parking garage that has about 16 spaces in it, and there's about 5 spaces on the ground in the back as well. And we are not modifying any of the floor plate or the parking or any of those things outside of the footprint of the building. Next slide. And this is the existing 1st floor, which again will pretty much remain the same, except for we will be adding a mezzanine floor to that. Next slide. And next slide, I think, shows it better. So this is the yellow is where the mezzanine area would be. Shirley, do you have the ability to run the short video to show that mezzanine area?
I don't know how to share my screen.
Can Shirley share her screen?
Yes, she's being promoted right now to panelist to be able to do that.
Thank you. It's just a quick sort of 3D video that the architect prepared to show the mezzanine and what's intended for that space.
Let me unmute. So I think that'll help. So this is the entrance. This is where you saw the
It's
exit.
not, I don't think it's running. Is it running for anyone?
No, I see file.
Oh,
We just see the files.
back.
You might have to share a different screen. Like it gives you or a different window. You might be able to select a different window there.
All right, let's see here. Let's see. Let me share. And then let's do that. I know what you're saying, so let me try that. Here we go. Is this?
There you go. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So this is the new vestibule area here. And this is the mezzanine level that we're able to incorporate because the floor to ceiling heights are so high. There's an existing meeting space back here. And this front area will be what we are calling an art gallery, open to the community for various events. This is another view from the mezzanine level looking down to the main entrance and to sort of that additional meeting space. And this here is from the hallway, from the kitchen, leading to the entrance area, which we're calling art gallery open space. And this is helpful because what we now have is, aside from the meeting room, you also have another area here that can be opened and where you can have two different functions at the, and not just one, where currently there's only the meeting room. And again, here is a view from the mezzanine level. And as you can see, it really enhances, it really opens up the space. And this is what the Festival Center is envisioning, is really creating a more transparent feel inside that really modernizes the building, and again, makes it more attractive, and again, accommodating to community activities. So I'll just stop that there, and I'll stop share. Just wanted to give you a visual of what that looked like.
Okay, back to Graham's. Yeah, Graham's screen. Yeah, so then that is there's the mezzanine in plan view. So that would be added. Next slide. And then the second floor, as we said, is not changing. Next slide. So no change there other than some internal movements, but nothing to the walls, no new construction.
What this does add is additional smaller spaces for nonprofits who really need that smaller work area, which is very difficult, obviously, to obtain currently. So this is another
Okay, next slide. So then, as we were discussing, the third floor right now is just this part to the right side, and then the stairwell on the left side, and the rest is just roof space. And so the plan is essentially just to fill in this space and connect the two sides and get some additional office space up here, as well as a small deck off the side of a conference room. So next slide. So the yellow, again, is the newly added, proposed to be added space, and then sort of a covered deck area on the one on the left bottom of the plan that would have some outdoor space after having been in a conference room or something that you could step out there. Next slide. And then this just shows the solar panels, which will be on the roof. Next. This will show the elevation. So this is the existing elevation, as you saw from the pictures and the actual look of the building. Next slide. And the proposal is to just fill in what used to be roof space and make that office space. Next slide. And then on the back, similarly, it's just a roof on the left side there, and the proposed elevation, next slide, would be to have that space filled in with a conference room and then a covered deck, and then solar panels on all of the roof structures. Next slide. And this is a section just through the building, which you can kind of see on the right-hand side is the mezzanine floor that's added, and you can see on the roof, the solar panel construction up there. Next slide. And so our request, as I explained, is now actually for variances. One, to have non-residential FAR of 2.3. Again, the total area of the zone and the lot allows for a 3.5, so we're not exceeding the actual building and construction that's permitted. It's just the allocation of the non-residential space. And then the second variance is with regard to the non-residential space only being allowed on the first and second floors. And we are requesting that the third floor be able to expand to allow that additional non-residential space. So we are hoping to get the plans together to be filed over the next week or two. Of course, with the holiday, we may not make it by next week, but hopefully by the following week, to get the applications in to be heard by the BZA. And of course, we welcome any of your questions or comments, and would hope, of course, that we'll get support from the ANC as part of the application process. So let us know if you have any questions, and we're happy to answer them.
So questions from, thank you, Emily, and the team from the Festival Center. Commissioner Guthrie, please.
Yeah, I've got a couple questions. In the first place, it seems to me like this is a good proposal that is of benefit to the community in general. What I'm wondering is what the criteria and standards are for allowing that variance, and why there is in existence the limitation that there is. If you could speak to that a little.
Why there is the limitation. But
yeah, it strikes me that Columbia Road is commercial quite a ways, and I don't quite understand the thought process behind limiting it to, you know, two floors of commercial as opposed to more than 2 floors, and the FAR limit of 2.0 instead of something higher than that. There must be some thought
yeah, I think
behind that,
yeah,
but I'm not aware of what it is.
Yeah, in this zone, they were hoping to get to have more residential. And so I think just as a concept in general for this zone, that was the intent, was to have less non-residential and more residential. But obviously this building has always been non-residential, except maybe back in the way beginning there may have been something, but it has been functioning as a non-residential building, but it, you know, it is only 3 stories. So that was the intent of the zone.
What's the legal criteria for determining whether or not the variance is appropriate here?
So, I don't know if Kyle or.
Yeah, I can chime in here.
Okay,
so,
thank you. Yeah.
The criteria for area variance relief, there are 4 criteria. The first is that the property is affected by exceptional size, shape, topography, or other extraordinary conditions. The second is that the owner would encounter practical difficulties if the zoning regulations were strictly applied. The third is that the variance would not cause substantial detriment to the public good. And the fourth is that the variance would not substantially impair the intent, purpose, or integrity of the zoning plan, the zoning regulations and map.
But it sounds to me like on that basis that you only have one of the 4 criteria met, which wouldn't be sufficient to the BZA, I wouldn't think.
Well, no, I think.
I'm sure you've got a theory for getting around that, but.
Well, I think that we do have at least a shape that is not rectangular. We do have an existing building that is in need of repair. So we would hope that we can put forth that we do have some condition that would allow for it. There are certainly practical difficulties of adding square footage anywhere else on the building. This appears to be, this is the most practical place to put it. And we do think that it, is good for the public, and that it serves the public interest in terms of having a nonprofit facility here to help the community. So
Yeah,
we are still fleshing out the arguments.
Yeah, I have no problem conceptually with what you're trying to do. I think it makes sense. I think it's, the best way to get some additional space that seems to be of benefit to the community to have. All of that's fine. I have a hard time cramming it into the particular constraints of the variance law as you articulated it.
Right.
Although BZA is generally quite amenable to putting on a pair of too tight jeans. It's really,
Well, so
I guess it's not something that really has to be a concern of the ANCs. It's your lawyers and the BZA that will have to deal with it. But
Right.
I would certainly be inclined to support the proposal.
That's great. And
Great.
For what it's worth, the OP, the Office of Planning, referred us to a couple similarly situated properties who were requesting area variances from the same statutory restriction. So, and that were approved by the BZA ultimately. So we do have, I believe, some precedent for this kind of request.
but
So-
good point, and we know we got to work on that.
Amir, so currently the question before us is whether or not the ANC should be approving of this, but my understanding is that plans have not actually dropped, and normally we don't really consider one of these things until the plans have been dropped and there's a date that we're looking at, and it doesn't sound like we're in that posture yet. So I'm wondering whether it's appropriate to actually take action on this other than to give them a pat on the back at this point and let us know when you actually need something.
Yeah, well, I'm wondering whether whether there will be something ready for the December 2nd meeting. Should this be on the agenda for then?
Well,
That's
it
a question
sounded like they thought with best of luck they'd have something out next week, but likely it would be the next week after that, in which case we're not going to have the designs in place. But
okay.
given what they've suggested to us, I can't imagine that there will be substantial opposition to it, regardless of when they bring it in. And just as good practice, it makes sense to have the plans dropped with BZA before we actually do anything, so that we're acting on the plans that actually are there.
Yeah. So why don't we table this for now?
Well, so would that mean we would have to come back again, or we could go directly? What?
Well, it seems to me that we'd need to have the actual plans that are dropped. And that at that point, a fairly truncated review would be appropriate, because we've already at least heard, and I note that several of the new commissioners are here at this meeting, so it's not going to be a lot of news that needs to be put out. But I would say once the plans drop, let's bring it back in front of PZT to offer a resolution for the full ANC. And you probably won't need your whole team here, just, appropriate people to be able to ask questions if there's new questions that are raised by the different drawings. That's as far as I'm concerned anyway.
Okay, great. I see there was a question or two in the chat. Should we answer those?
Yeah, please.
So architectural drawings, we are working on those, and we do have some. Will there be a public restroom access? Since there will be community art space on the first floor, will there be public restroom access? Shirley, do you?
There will be we have four restrooms on the first floor that are included in the design, and another one on the mezzanine level.
Okay. Okay, well, we very much appreciate you putting us on your agenda. I guess we just wanted to, see if there were going to be any concerns or other things that we needed to know about before we went too far. As I said, we've been working with Joel and Matt to be sure we had the right application.
We have another question about the renovation. We're forecasting, I think, about 12 months. And our current organization officers will depart. If there's any departure, it'll be temporarily. And we're looking at ways to accommodate them during the construction period. I think that answered the last question. Okay.
Well, good luck with all this, and thanks for coming and explaining what the proposal is. It's helpful to be able to see even these preliminary drawings to be able to understand what you're doing. And it seems like a good idea. Look forward to you getting it done, and good luck getting things, all the ducks in a row.
All right, well, thank you. We appreciate that.
You're wishing us, and so thank you for your time. And we look forward to getting you more information in the coming weeks.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
So moving to the next item on our agenda is the Commissioner Zottoli on the line. He's set to discuss a crosswalk. Hey, Commissioner.
You want me to introduce the two issues?
Yes, please.
Okay. Both of them have to do with crosswalks. One
And
at
both of them, they're Adams Mill and Ontario. They're different agenda items.
Okay. So, which one is the next one?
The first one being Adams Mill Road at Ontario Place, and the other one being Calvert Street.
Okay. Thank you. I'll speak to the Adams Mill and Ontario Place one. This is right where the new children's playground is at Walter Pierce Park. And there are lots of children that cross there, adults with strollers and pets on their way to the dog park, even commuters that are cutting through Walter Pierce Park to get to the metro station. And there's a stop sign at that crosswalk on Ontario Place, but not everybody observes the stop sign. And even those who do stop sometimes will then speed up before a pedestrian has a chance to cross Adams Mill Road. A resident who lives nearby asked that we do something about it, and I prepared the standard traffic assessment questionnaire for the Department of Transportation to review. I've got some questions myself about the process we should use for handling that questionnaire, but first maybe we should just talk about the crosswalk itself and what might be needed there.
Sure.
I remember Commissioner Guthrie explained that there once was a speed bump at that location. Ted, if you could elaborate on that.
It was the worst possible speed bump in existence. From the minute they put it in, it was damaging the undercarriage of any vehicle that wasn't jacked up quite a bit. And they wound up, I think that's when this heavy crosswalking got put in lieu of the raised crosswalk or speed bump or whatever it was that they had in there. But this is not something that should be a surprise to DDOT at all. They've been aware of problems at this location before, and particularly with traffic that comes out of the park and then is trying to zip down 18th to get downtown. Tends to be a fair number of commuters on this stretch as opposed to local traffic. So it seems to me that the appropriate thing is to ask them to take a close look at this, recognizing the dangers that the neighbors have experienced, and figure out the best approach to make this a safer intersection. And my understanding is that's through this request for a traffic study. And rather than articulating particular things that we want put in, although maybe a hawk request would make sense here.
I think you can actually say in there, is there something that you'd recommend or that would not be objectionable to the person making the request?
Because
so we could put in hawk in there.
It's not a standard intersection. And it's as you can see from the visual, it's sort of an oversized intersection, but it has a whole lot of pedestrian traffic as well as a fair amount of commuter traffic that comes along Adamsville Road. It seems like it might be a really appropriate one for hawk signal.
Great. And I think also we have Commissioner-elect Faulkner on the line, Megan Faulkner. So if, and I think Commissioner Zottoli has been coordinating with her on this as well. So if you have something to add, please do feel free to chime in. So let me see. There is the park nearby that produces quite a bit of pedestrians. So I think I'm in favor of this. I'm looking to see if I can just get this. Is this on our website? No. Commissioner Guthrie, have you seen the traffic safety questionnaire yet?
No, I haven't reviewed it. I saw that it got posted in emails from John.
I basically put in the questionnaire what I mentioned in the introduction, the uses of that crosswalk and the problems that we're having. The questionnaire doesn't ask what solutions we would recommend. They just want to know what the conditions are now, and then I suspect DDOT then proceeds on their own to decide how to handle it.
There was it wasn't that long ago that I filled one of these out, maybe a year or two ago, that they did have a specific question about any recommendation, but I guess DDOT might have modified the form. Okay.
I would suggest that we go ahead and recommend a hawk on this because it is an extensively used commuter route and it does have a whole lot of pedestrian traffic that needs to get across there. And it's something that I would think would go substantially towards pedestrian safety issues.
Okay. Yeah. That sounds good. I think that I'm reviewing these traffic assessment questionnaires.
In any case, when we transmit the questionnaire to DDOT,
provide a letter of support.
We can add our own recommendations.
Yeah, to that letter.
I do think that the request for a hawk signage sort of shoots it to a different portion of DDOT. That if that's what we want, I think we need to have that in the resolution.
What portion of DDOT does it go to?
Well, they have all of these separate little groups that look at particular issues. And I had the impression when we requested the hawk signage over on 16th that it was a separate group that it went to.
Well, I think we're going to send it to, there is a specific place where we drop all of our resolutions to, and then they route it to that group. So whether it's like the bike group, or if there is a hawk group, then it would go there.
Well, that's why I'm suggesting that there be a specific reference to installation.
To the hawk?
Hawk sick.
Yeah, absolutely. So that can go in our, there should be a specific reference, right? I'm in agreement there. So I move that we pass, that we recommend that the full ANC draft a letter of support in support of the traffic safety questionnaire and a hawk signal at that intersection.
Second.
All right, great. All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, 2-0. And John, do you want to cover the next intersection at Cliffborn?
The second crosswalk is on Calvert Street at Cliffborn Place. Cliffborn is part of that long stretch between 18th Street and the Duke Ellington Bridge. And there's a lot of traffic goes along Calvert, on that stretch. And I must say that because there aren't that many four-way intersections between 18th or Adams Mill Road and Connecticut Avenue, cars tend to speed up. At Cliffborn, there is a stop sign. But I'm sorry, no, there isn't a stop sign, I think. I'm getting confused between the two. But there is a sign just saying that pedestrians might cross there. And the complaint, again, from a resident is that cars don't yield to the pedestrians. And they are going fast. Again, the assessment questionnaire that I prepared describes the situation, talks about all the different vehicles that use Calvert Street, and talks about the fairly high volume of traffic, people on their way to and from the metro or to there's an entrance to Walter Pierce Park right there. And the Vita Senior Center, and picture seniors just trying to hobble across the street while the cars are about to whiz by. It's a place that needs more than the pedestrian crossing sign. Exactly what, I wouldn't know for sure. When I mentioned this at the last ANC meeting, there was a suggestion that a raised crosswalk might help. Perhaps Commissioner Guthrie will think that the hawk is a good solution here as well.
One of the challenges
all I'm doing is flagging the problem.
Isn't it near another signal?
With that location is that the traffic lights are timed in such a way that people really have to speed to get through the intersection of Adams Mill Road. If you clear Adams Mill Road to get to the one that is before the bridge, you basically have to speed. You certainly can't have any sort of pause, reflection, whatever, and make that next light. And one of the solutions to this might be changing the timing for the light at the Ellington Bridge. Because you've got a lot of traffic that has just cleared, however they came through, they've just cleared the mess of Adams Mill, Calvert, 18th, Columbia Road, and they're really focusing on what's down the way instead of focusing on the immediate vicinity. And Clifford Place itself is sort of a blind intersection because it doesn't go through to the north there. It's only on the south. And I think it's very easy for drivers to not realize that there might even be people, regardless of the signage, who would be coming across from Cliffborn Place across Calvert. So I think it's an intersection that really bears study by DDOT that not only looks at pedestrian methods to make the pedestrian crossing safer, but integrates a look at the timing sequence of the lights on at the Adams Mill Road intersection and at the Duke Ellington Bridge intersection, so that the timing is such that it does not encourage speeding along that stretch. And I don't know if there's a way to do that in this DDOT request, but it certainly seems that that should be included.
Well, there is a place in the questionnaire for people to describe the current traffic control measures. They ask about the specific location, but I think in that part of the questionnaire, we can talk about the lights that affect the traffic on either side of the crosswalk.
And so DDOT has a program that was recently, I think about 2 weeks ago, they announced that they're retiming all or not all, but hundreds of signalized intersections in Northwest and elsewhere in DC, including Ward 1. So maybe what we can do is reference that new traffic signal timing program and request that they specifically look at that intersection.
Yeah,
that would be helpful.
I think especially the traffic that is coming from the east on Calvert is inclined to ignore the Cliffborn Place because it's sort of a short block from the last traffic light. So it does seem that in addition to timing issues, they need to do something to make it more visible than it is to the drivers so that they recognize the possibility of pedestrians coming out across.
Okay, so the visibility, we can notate that in the traffic safety questionnaire. And then we can pass a resolution in support of the TSQ, as well as a request to evaluate the intersection as part of its new traffic signal timing program.
Sounds like an excellent idea. I second that motion.
Okay. Great. All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Another 2-0. And this one is the Cliffburn. What is the other street? Is it Calvert?
Clifford and Calvert, yeah.
Hey, Amir, Commissioner-elect Gold has had his hand raised for a few minutes.
Oh, sorry for that, Zach. Go right ahead.
Okay, it's not in. I was just thinking back to the Adams Mill Road stop sign. I noticed from the photo that there's a good amount of space between where the parking is and where the stop sign is. But knowing that area, it's quite possible, especially on Sundays, that cars park in that big empty space between the legal parking and the stop sign. And so it might be worthwhile to recommend to DDOT to put in some sort of a buffer, and I've seen them doing this a lot in the DuPont Circle area, so that a car would not be able to, so that a driver would not be able to park his or her car at the corner, and that would provide more daylight. And obviously, any driver should make a full stop and look both ways at the intersection and make sure no one's there, but it certainly helps their ability to do so when there's not a car that is blocking a dog or a pedestrian with a child at the intersection there. So that might be one potential item to recommend for that space.
So we could add that to the resolution as another recommendation for that intersection.
You're talking about the Walter Pierce side of the intersection. One of the things
I was talking about
the people doing offloading there, either if they're bringing stuff in for something rather Walter Pierce, or getting out the kids and the strollers and all that, that it's
No,
sort of
this
nice
was
to be
on the
able to park there briefly.
this
They
was on the
just
northbound side.
Pardon me?
On the northbound side, so across the street from the park.
I was thinking right at the park itself. There's that long, because it's sort of an expanded intersection, and there is no street on that side. There's Ontario Place that comes in, and then it's the park on the other side, and that strip that would be the access point for a continuation of Ontario Place gets used a fair amount for people unloading and loading to and from the park, which I'm not sure is really a bad thing to have right there.
Yeah, I mean, I would even argue you get rid of parking, although maybe a resident wouldn't like that, but have that as a pickup drop-off zone for people dropping their kids at the park. But no, I was referring to the other side of the street, where it appeared that at the intersection of Ontario and Adams Mill, that there was room at the stop sign where someone, especially on a Sunday when they're not ticketing, could sneak in and park there, and doing so would block people crossing to the park.
Ah, well, those are just scofflaws.
Yes, unfortunately, they exist in our neighborhood.
Okay. Well, thank you, Zach. I think we can put a recommendation into the resolution that will be considered at our meeting on December 2nd. So, moving on to our next agenda item, the discussion of the SunTrust Plaza. It's the last agenda item for tonight, and it's a discussion and update regarding the SunTrust Plaza case. For those of you that don't know, P.N. Hoffman has sought to construct a condo building at 1800 Columbia Road, which is the southwest corner of 18th and Columbia, and community groups have asserted that there is a public easement there, and there's been ongoing litigation, and it was requested by one of the community groups that they provide an update to the community at tonight's meeting. So is there somebody, is Paul Zuckerberg on the line?
Before we do that, Amir, it would make sense to talk about notice issue and what we can and can't do at this meeting.
Right. So I was requested to add something to the agenda, but that request came in without 10 days notice. And so I had already explained this previously. And what I did was I put this discussion because there was also a last minute request to put a resolution on the agenda. And though you can do that if the topic itself has had notice to the community, 10-day notice as required by our ANC's bylaws. However, this topic was put on with only 9 days notice. So there we go. Is there something you'd like to add to that, Commissioner Guthrie?
Well, it seems to me appropriate to make a preliminary notice, a preliminary motion that we add this item to the agenda for informational purposes for the community, in that it's been a long time since the community was advised of the updates to the situation with the plaza and the litigation, and that it would be in the community's interest to receive that update and acknowledge that because there isn't a need for this committee to pass anything out at this point in time, we can certainly consider whether we should add something to the agenda for the December meeting, potential resolution in support of the plaza. But at this point, I'd say that the agenda item should be limited to discussion,
and yeah,
information about the plaza and where we are now.
Absolutely. So which the agenda has been online, and we've communicated that to the community for the last 9 days. So having said all that,
So I need a second for my preliminary motion.
I second, but we're just talking about the discussion. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Paul Zuckerberg.
Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Zuckerberg. Can you hear me?
Yep.
We sure can.
Okay, so just want to give you an update on the litigation. As everyone here probably knows, there's a public plaza on the corner of 18th and Columbia, the SunTrust Plaza. The bank and PN Hoffman wanted to develop it. It's been some time now, so we don't know what the current status of the project is, because SunTrust is merged with BB&T, so they already have a bank there. The project would have had SunTrust get a temporary location, then move back into the new project at the end. So we don't know what the status is, but the lawsuit states that there's a public easement on the corner that was created through an agreement in the late 1970s with the original bank, and it's been honored ever since, and it's been a public plaza. So while the bank or the developer can build on the lot, they can only build on 75% of the property. They have to leave the 25% corner open as a public plaza. They want to build on 95% of it and leave only 5%. So it looks a little like it does on the McDonald's side, where you could just kind of squeeze by on that corner and they have a building there. And the public uses of the plaza, which include vendors, farmers market, community meetings, would be lost. We went to court and we presented our evidence, and the initial judge found that there's a substantial likelihood that we would prevail on the merits and entered a preliminary injunction. Through a very complicated series of events, the defendants moved the case to federal court because SunTrust is a Georgia corporation, and the federal judge recently ruled, although we have constitutional standing, that is, there's a harm in the loss of the plaza, that the community groups don't have standing, a different type of standing, prudential standing to file the claim. And he remanded it back to the Superior Court, and the Superior Court judge has issued an order indicating that he's likely to dismiss our lawsuit because there's no standing. We don't have standing to bring the claim. And so that's the current situation of the case. So there is a claim. It is a valid claim. At least one judge has found we would likely prevail on it. There is harm because we would lose the public plaza, but we are, it's a public easement, and the court held that community groups don't have standing to bring the claim. We disagree with that, but that's where we are right now.
Okay. Are there questions from folks in the community? Doesn't look like there are.
Yeah, we do. Hold on one second. Larry Hargrove.
Yes, it's
Go ahead,
Larry.
Larry.
I just wanted to ask Paul, what is the status of the possibility of the District of Columbia in some way espousing the claim and providing the necessary standing?
Well, the District of Columbia, the implication of the court's ruling is that the District of Columbia, could be bring the claim. So they would be the natural party to bring the claim. Of course, we approached, I believe the clients had approached Brianne, and she had not been that enthusiastic about it. So it always comes down to a question of how strongly they feel about the claim and whether they want to assert it against these big developers. So unfortunately, if it is lost, it'll be kind of lost forever, and that important public square, the heart of the community will be gone. And all because over, a small portion of the parcel.
Okay, thank you, Larry, for your question. Is Mr. Chris Otten on the line? Chris had asked initially to add this item to the agenda for a discussion.
I don't see him in the list.
Yeah.
We have a hand up here.
Okay. Any other questions for?
Kristen asked in the chat, understanding that the bank is closing in December, what will happen after that?
Well, the next hearing before where the judge is going to make a decision is on January 12th. But if we're unable to prevent it, what's going to happen is that it's going to be built, torn down, and there's going to be a condominium put on the corner, on virtually to the very corner of the street.
Vikram, you raised your hand.
I did. Hello, everyone. I'm one of the co-facilitators of Adams Morgan for Reasonable Development, one of the parties to the case. And I've spoken to Chris about bringing this before the PZT tonight. So he can't apparently access, for technical reasons, the Zoom call. So I just want to chime in that I appreciate, that we appreciate your interest in it. And, our hope is that the ANC continues to be supportive of doing something really ultimately positive for the community. The first ANC back in the 1970s that actually got this plaza created did so as part of a landmark deal to ensure that redlining in the neighborhood ended, as well as to make 90% loan to value mortgages possible and bilingual tellers possible. Those were some of the things that are instrumental in me being a resident of the neighborhood. And this plaza is another in terms of the space itself being used for the low-cost farmers market. And all these things were presented in the initial hearing for the preliminary injunction against the demolition permits for the 95% of the plot plan that was advanced by P.N. Hoffman. And so, we are in the process of just reconnecting and re-educating the community because the case has been somewhat dormant. SunTrust elected to try to get this into federal court so that they'd have an advantage. The federal court now sent it back to Superior Court. And we are just looking for the ANC, along with other community leaders, to simply say, we want this case decided on the merits, because to the question that was asked about what happens after the bank moves out, I mean, if this thing is tied up in litigation for a long time, essentially that corner becomes abandoned. And we've already seen with the police station moving out an increase in, people sleeping on the property, and that sort of thing. So if the bank itself is not operating the building, I think there's going to be, and it's still tied up in litigation, which it would be if essentially we were found to not have the standing in Superior Court. We'd appeal that, and would appeal it because we believe that the neighborhood ought to have a voice as a neighborhood in speaking to issues like this. So, and it was originally the neighborhood and not the District of Columbia that secured the actual original commitment from the bank to create the space. So, yeah, I just wanted to share some of that background information and let you all know that, the basic issue here is whether or not we can actually get this case resolved quickly on the merits. And that comes down to whether or not a party that definitively has standing, like the district itself, or us as community groups, are able to step in and ask for an issue like this to be resolved in favor of the neighborhood residents. So, the standing issue is really what's here right now, and it's going to make a real difference, I think, if you come back next month to encourage city agencies in your broad powers as an ANC to, provide advice at great weight to the city to get this case resolved on the merits and not have it tangled up in litigation so that it's sitting abandoned and unfortunate things are occurring on the plaza itself, which I think will only contribute to the community feeling like something needs to happen sooner than later, which may not ultimately be in the community's benefit. So thanks for letting me share that.
Sure. Thank you, Vikram. We do have a question. Joan, is it? Just an email address.
Yeah, Joan, I don't know if Vikram, with what he said at the end there, if it answered your question about standing, but feel free to talk if you still have a question. Nope. Okay. And then Kristen asked in the chat, did anybody from the bank or PN Hoffman come tonight? And I do not believe so.
Hello, my question wasn't answered.
Okay, go right ahead, Joan.
What exactly is required to have standing? Hello?
Yeah. Oh, you might.
Well, there's, standing is one of the more complicated issues in the law. In this case, there's two types of standing that the court ruled on. One is something called constitutional standing. That is whether there's a harm, whether this is a justifiable claim, and we do have that. The other is something called prudential standing, and whether we as a community group are the proper plaintiffs to bring this action, and the judge ruled that we're not. And that has a very strong effect because community groups have always had been found to have standing, not always, but often. And many of the important decisions, not only in our neighborhood, but throughout the city, are won by community groups who have the right to go into court and to argue the cases. The most famous is the Sierra Society, which had a right to sue to protect the environment. So it's a very restrictive decision, and it can have far-reaching effects not only on this case, of course, but on the rights of community groups in general to bring various actions in order to protect the rights of their members and the rights of the communities that they represent. So if those groups are not allowed to go into court, the only person who would go into court is the city itself, and the city can't, get involved in every case. So if you bar community groups, it's really going to change what citizens can do to affect the way the city is run.
Hey, Chris Otten, you should be able to talk now.
Okay, yeah, I tried to call, but it was muted, so now I guess I'm on.
Yes, sir.
Using my data. Okay, is the floor open or?
Yeah, go ahead,
Yes,
sir.
please go ahead.
So I've been a resident of the community for a while, and I helped, petition back in 2016 when we first heard about this, plan to build on the plaza, and we got like 600 signatures, and that's when I met Paul and Vic and their interests around this, and so many others. And luckily, the folks went down to Washingtoniana division at the MLK Library before it was closed, because that's where they discovered all these negotiation documents and the actual agreement, right, that happened here. And I think what's important to note here is it's already been said. I mean, what didn't happen yet is this question, the democratic principle here of whether our plaza as a public dedicated easement exists or not has never been answered. According to Judge Edelman at our local Superior Court, it did in his mind that we were likely to win this case, which is why he stayed the raising of the plaza. They could have raised the rest of the building and built something behind it. But I mean, we won a preliminary injunction, and that's no small feat. And of course, then SunTrust, a very influential mega corporation, had it successfully moved to a federal court. Imagine this, deciding on a tiny corner in the middle of our neighborhood. And of course, they never actually get to the question. The question is never answered, whether this plaza was dedicated to us or not. And I think that's kind of why we're at this stage right now, is to understand that question. And as a democratic principle, and I've talked to a bunch of people about this, including some of the commissioners, this basic question should be answered. And the people should have their day in court to have it answered with all the evidence that's been supplied. And somebody should just rule on this. And it shouldn't just be thrown out on standing, as Paul has enumerated. It's very highly troublesome, actually, if this is upheld. And I think we would proceed on appeal to do that, but to protect those rights of citizens to uphold contracts that are negotiated and agreed upon, such as this plaza. Anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. I talked to Amir. This is an important update, that the federal court did not judge that question. It just threw it out on standing. And so that's what we'll go back to Superior Court about. But I think as a kind of a broader alert and notice to the community, and all this effort and everything, and the understanding of the legacy that's here, that against the win by Adams Morgan community residents, yes, a long time ago, but dutifully so against racist redlining. We led the country in that fight, and to see it crushed by more luxury condos when we need more affordable housing is just a kind of a spit in our face too. Not to mention the actual forgetting about condos, whatever project is there, that this plaza exists for a reason. And that question needs to be decided. I think the ANC can take a role here to stand up for that democratic principle and say this question should be decided before any construction activities happen at the plaza. Not to say that the bank can't be demolished or nothing about whatever project itself could happen behind the plaza, but the plaza itself, the question should be answered. And I think that's important for us to acknowledge as a community.
Right. Thank you, Chris. There are a couple of other hands up. Bob?
Me? Yeah. Hello. Yes. Hi. I'd just like to remind everybody what's at stake here from the point of view of livability. There's always been lots of room on that plaza to have both a higher, taller building for apartments and a market area, an open public space. There's lots of room there. What we're seeing here is another example of developer greed. They want the whole thing. They just can't stand the idea of a square foot of space being open and free. And so that's what's motivating me to oppose the proposed development. It would be a sad day if they get to do what they proposed. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Let me see if we have any other questions.
So I just want to confirm. So the court just refused to say why there's no standing. They just said it.
Well, there's this is Paul. I don't know if you still hear me. There's an opinion that the judge issued. It's 12 or 15 pages. It said that, as I said, there's constitutional standing, but there isn't what he called prudential standing. And that means that community groups cannot bring these types of claims. And that, it's not necessarily the final word on it, but that's what the federal judge said. And that's likely going to lead to a dismissal of this particular, our particular lawsuit. But the issue of whether or not there is an easement is still going to be not resolved. And one of the reasons we want to get to court is if we get to court, the issue will be resolved on the merits. That is, the judge will decide, is there a public easement or not? And every judge that has addressed that has said, yes, there is a public easement. So we think we'd win on the merits. And also, once the decision on the merits is made, then the bank or the developers are going to know whether they can build on 75% of the parcel or on 95% of the parcel. And, some renovation of the plaza and apparently the building can go forward. But unless we can get to court, unless someone can litigate it, it's just going to be held in limbo. And we don't think that's good either.
Makes sense. Thank you, Mr. Zuckerberg. Other questions? Hearing none. I want to thank everyone for coming on and providing much needed update to the community. This has been something that's been going on for many years, and it has been some time since the community has heard anything from either of the community groups that are litigating in court. All right. Well, that's the final item on our agenda. Thank you all again for coming tonight. And we'll see you at our December 2nd meeting.
Stay safe.